Hi, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team in the Evolution Revolution. And we are on Sunday, April 25th, 2021. And we are getting ready to start the second part of the book, which Linda will give you more information in just a minute. We are glad you're here. And Linda, I also am curious. I haven't flipped through myself, but how close are we to needing to decide what book is next?
We're probably maybe a week or two out. I mean, it's time, definitely.
Okay, what was the last, besides this book, what was the last book that we read?
Hang on. I have to look in my Kindle.
Was it The Storm Before the Calm?
Yeah. And there's a second one in that series, isn't there?
I believe so. I don't know what it's called. Conversations
Yes.
with Humanity, right?
Yeah, it's called The Only Thing That Matters, I believe.
Okay, we haven't read that before? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, we'll take it away, Linda.
Okay, so for today, let me get back out of my Kindle. I'm actually reading from the hardback copy of The God Solution. Because, you know, folks, you don't want to have this book digitally. With the cover like this, you really want to have a real copy. That's how I feel anyway. And if for those of you that can't see, this heart is actually made up of all the little icons that represent all the different kinds of religions. So, and we are on part 2, the mechanics. That starts on page 103, which is also then the beginning of chapter 24. If we're going to talk about pure love as an energy, and if we're going to say that this particular energy is what God is, then an explanation of how to use that energy, how to direct it and project it, would be most beneficial now. We haven't said so much so far about the specifics of how to engage this new force for change in our day-to-day lives, but let's do so now. We need to look at not just the model of pure love, but the mechanics of it, not just the energy, but the engine, not just the promise, but the process. I'm talking now about what may be for many people the developing of a new skill. In fact, I believe that humanity as a whole is fast approaching what I consider to be the final frontier. In a word, metaphysics. We've already noted that this is not an aspect of life has been widely understood by the human species. The term itself is not widely understood. It emerges from the philosophies of Aristotle and was understood to refer to that which comes after physics in our learning process. That is, first we learn about the physical world, what it is and how it functions. Then we learn about the meta, loosely translated from the Greek as after, physical world, which is the cause of the physical world. We humans have actually learned about cause and effect in reverse order. First, we saw the effect. We observed what was happening, and only then did we explore the cause. We wanted to know why what was happening the way it was happening. Metaphysics, thus, could be described as the why of life. This is what makes it so powerful and so dangerous if engaged unconsciously. To use a metaphor, we're playing with matches in the dynamite room. Then we're wondering why things are blowing up all around us. Perhaps a short course in metaphysics might be timely here. It is my awareness that what God has created is a process, an intricate system of singular energetic vibrational emanations that produce the characteristics of all physical objects. These objects generate energy exchanges in a cause and effect relationship that produces events in the physical realm. This process is the cause of all things, and it is a process in which we are all continually involved, since we are all both senders and receivers of energy. Now, this important detail: ideas are energetic vibrational emanations. Intentions are energetic vibrational emanations. Conceptualizations are energetic vibrational emanations. All of these are forms of thought, and thoughts can be measured, detached, felt, and projected. All physical objects and life forms, not just human beings, react to the energy exchanges going on in life all the time. Did you ever walk into a room where the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife? Sure you have. We all have. Nobody has to say anything. Nobody even has to have a particular expression on their face. You can feel the tension in the air. Likewise, when the energy of the moment is uplifting and positive, it can be felt by many people just entering the space. Being touched by the energy exchanges all around them, sentient beings are able to then respond from their mind and soul in a way which expresses their understanding, knowing, and choice about who they are and how they choose to experience any given moment. Reduced to one sentence, everything is comprised of energy, and everything exudes or radiates energy towards everything else. We see then that everything has an impact on everything else. It may be a very small impact, in some cases negligible, or it might be a significant, depending on who or what is projecting the energy and how many sources are projecting it in the same direction, in the same way, at the same time. The impact of your energy and mine can be substantial. This is because all sentient beings, such as us, have the ability to consciously create both the type of energy they project, positive or negative, and the intensity of that energy. We do this by deliberately choosing the emotion we wish to express in a given situation. Not all life forms have this capability. To illustrate this difference, turtles do not become angry, neither do snakes. You can't make a snake mad or scared. It reacts to exterior events or conditions based on instinct, not emotion. A lion, on the other hand, can be angered and afraid. Trust me on this, you don't want to test it out. A lion is not, however, prone to introspection. It is difficult to imagine a lion sitting around after roaring a territorial invader away and thinking, gee, I wonder if I roared a bit too loud there. Could I have overreacted? I need to watch that. What will the other lions think? Humans can be so angered or scared, can also be angered or scared, but unlike other life forms on this planet, humans make value judgments, weighing their actions against certain philosophies and particular ideas, specific concepts, and sometimes theological constructions, and often changing their mind about being angry or afraid and deciding to be just the opposite, even as their very survival is being threatened. The marvelous anecdote about an incident in the life of author Byron Katie comes to mind here. Author Jim Drever wrote about this on his website, and that's jimdrever.com. This story was told to me by a friend who heard it directly from Stephen Mitchell, Brian Katie's husband. Brian Katie and Stephen were walking back to their car late at night when a man suddenly slipped out of the darkness, grabbed Byron Katie by the shoulder, stuck a gun in her face and said, "Give me everything you've got or I'm going to kill you." Without missing a beat, Byron Katie turned to him in a calm voice and said, "I wouldn't do that, sweetie. You'll just create a terrible mess for yourself." At which point, the would-be mugger released his grip on her and fled back into the darkness. Now that is the embodiment of true presence, true fearlessness. What gives humans the ability to make the kind of choice that Byron Katie made is a deliberate decision, entered into ahead of time, to remain fully conscious of the choices that each moment in life places before us. This is a perfect example of how to use metaphysics in a positive and powerful way. The fact is that most of us encounter our life's choices unconsciously. The result is that more often than not, we act out of herd instinct. This does not always produce the best result. And that, my friends, is the understatement of the year. But there's a way out of this behavioral trap, and your escape is easier than you might think. I mean that literally. Read the sentence again. Your escape has little to do with what you may think and everything to do with what you may choose as your next projected emotion. Will it be a conscious choice or an unconscious choice? What emotion are you choosing to project right now in this moment as you are reading this? Excitement or boredom? Interest or disinterest? Enthusiasm or restiveness? Are you choosing your emotion consciously or unconsciously? Is it being intentionally created by you, or is it just falling over you? There are two ways in which metaphysics comes into play as a practical matter when we make decisions in our daily lives. And deliberately projected emotion is metaphysics of the first rank, of the highest order. We are making decisions all the time, of course. Big decisions, little decisions, important decisions, unimportant choices, selections that matter, selections that don't matter. What does matter is whether you know you're doing this and know when you're doing it. What is important is what you are aware that the power is always on. What is important is that you are aware that the power is always on. Not when the power is on, but that the power is on. You are experiencing an emotion and making a decision out of it right now about whether to even continue reading this book. That decision could affect the rest of your life. End of chapter. Pause or keep going?
Thank you, Linda. Does anybody want to make a comment?
I just want to keep going myself.
I just want to make, excuse me, I just want to make one comment real quick. And that's that feeling of walking into a room and feeling the tension. And I'm going to guess that everybody here has felt that. I've actually gone to someone's home one time. This was several years ago. And I walked in and I went, I think I need to leave. I mean, it was so thick. And I just thought these two are going to blow up. I don't know what's going on. But I feigned that I needed to call home real quick from my car. And I came back in and said, you know what? I have to go. Something's called me away. So I wasn't really lying, but I wasn't being direct because I don't think it was necessary to be direct. Over.
That is so funny, Nanette.
Yeah.
There's nothing stupid about you.
You mean you didn't want to say, gee, the energy is so toxic here. I think I better get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that was That was my other option. I thought, no, I can come up with something. And no harm, no foul.
Well, what was their reaction when you said that?
They were okay because they were expecting several other people over. And I happened to be the first one there.
Oh,
And,
okay. Okay.
And I just thought it took me everything to go out to this event anyway, this gathering. And I just figured I'm not supposed to be here tonight. You know. And so I did a white lie. So
well, I don't know that it was a white lie. It wasn't really a lie.
No, it was true. I had to get out of there.
You just didn't give them all of the information, which isn't always necessary. And sometimes, depending on who they are, they might not even understand you. Like I used to go, I still do. I still go to city council meetings on a regular basis. And back when the community that I live in was having a hard time with things that the city was doing, I was there every meeting. And I often had plans to speak. And there were times, because of the energy in that building and in that room, that I absolutely couldn't speak. And sometimes I couldn't even stay. Like sometimes I actually had to leave the building. I could not stay in the toxicity of the energy that was in that room for 3 or 4 hours to watch a meeting. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't even participate sometimes. It felt crippling because of the energy and the toxicity in that room. Now I can say that the things have changed quite a bit. And a lot of that toxicity is gone, which is great. But it's real. It's real.
Yes, ma'am, it is. And I think those of us that can feel it, hopefully we're all at a place on our journey where you can say, in your mind, you don't need to say to the hosts of a gathering, I'm out of here. You know, just, I got enough on my platter. I don't need this. And be polite and just, you know, say, I got to go.
But, you know, for people who aren't used to it, like for people who haven't been studying this kind of work all their lives and are new to this kind of material, they may be new to experiencing and realizing what happened. And I'm thinking back to some 22, 3 years ago. There was an organization that I was participating in, and I would go to these meetings. And after them, and they'd be hour-long, just like an hour-long meeting at lunch. And I would get out of those meetings, and because I mean, even though I'd been studying and a student of this work all my life, from the day I was born, I came out of those meetings and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't understand what I felt. And it took a lot to realize that there were actually, you know, I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but there were people in that meeting who had an investment in me not feeling well during those meetings. They had an investment, and they were actually wanting me to feel the way I ended up feeling when I came out of those meetings. It was very interesting. So this is serious stuff. And if you're new to the material or new to the experiences, you know, you be gentle with yourself as you're learning what you can tolerate, you know, as you go into different places.
I think that's a really good suggestion. And I think too, generally, and I, at the time of that gathering, I wasn't doing this. But now I have a tendency, even if it's before I go into the grocery store, I bless myself and try to protect myself because I don't want to pick up on everybody else's stuff. Or you walk out of the grocery store, which sometimes I do, feeling like, oh my gosh, I got more than groceries, you know? So, anyway.
You know, you mentioned that, and I just want to share this mantra I came up with the other day, because it's numerologically tuned to be a 9. Thank you, holiness, for softening my heart so I may feel love for these people.
Oh, I like that. You should put that in the window.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, I needed, I've been dealing with something that's been a little challenging, and I really needed that mantra. I still need it. I'm not done with it. I may need it for a long time. But yeah, and so you can use that, especially so if you find yourself in a situation where you can't leave, you know, where you have to stay, then run that in your head as you're there. Just, you don't have to say it out loud, but just run it in your head like a tape.
Yeah, it might not be to our best interest to say it out loud.
No, but it'll help. It'll help calm you.
Well, thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay. Then let's move on.
All right. Chapter 25. When using metaphysics, it's critical to know that there are 2 categories into which all energetic projections fall: collective versus individual, and conscious versus unconscious. Let's look at the first category, because this is where the greatest misunderstanding lies as I observe it. Many spiritual teachers, lecturers, and authors have been making a very misleading statement through the years. They have said, you create your own reality, and they leave it at that. This declaration has produced one of the most often mistaken notions that people hold about how reality is created. The announcement has left many with the impression that we are each producing individually the events of our own lives. Some have taken it to mean that we have created everything that's happened, not only in our life, but in the lives of those around us, our spouse, our children, our Uncle Joe falling down last week and spraining his ankle, canceling his much looked for visit with us, our boss suddenly confronted with an illness and having to close her business, leaving us without a job, the Woodlands fire season upending our nation, racial injustice upending our peace, a virus upending our world. Did we create that? Did our uncle or our boss create that? Where does our responsibility begin and where does it end? It is important to see that not even from a metaphysical point of view are we individually creating everything that has happened or will happen in our life, not in the way that many of us may have been led to understand. The exterior events of physical life are being created conjointly by all of us. It is our interior emotional response to those events that we are creating individually. And that is what is meant by the teaching, you create your own reality. Now that may seem obvious to most, but it is not as clear to everyone as one might think. Because of the misleading, incomplete way the truth, you create your own reality, has been passed on by many teachers, some people fall into what I call New Age guilt when things occur that they do not welcome. They ask themselves, now, why would I create that? And in their upset over what's occurred, they admonish themselves for not using their powers of creation more mindfully. This actually happened in my life. I was attending one of those classes that you could find everywhere back in the 80s about how to use your mind power to change your life. And the instructor did in fact say, you create your own reality. So I got the definite impression that as I think, so it will happen. Then I had an interesting experience. I was attending a New Age church in those days that featured a minister who spoke endlessly about how we generate reality. After the Sunday service one week, while we're having coffee and a donut in the church's fellowship hall, a friend in the congregation casually asked me, "How's it going?" I answered honestly with, things aren't so good at work right now. I think something's up. My boss is starting to sound like he's unhappy with me. And my friend said, "Well, why are you creating this or that?" I remember chuckling to myself and thinking what I wanted to do was reply, "I don't know. Why are you creating this?" and punch him in the nose. Of course, I didn't do that, but it got me wondering, who is responsible for what in a creation that involves more than one person, which nearly all of them do? A couple of months later, I was, in fact, laid off. And yes, I caught myself reprimanding myself for creating that. Then I ran into my old boss at a shopping center a few days later, and I found myself having to say, "Tell me, what did I do that made you fire me?" He looked surprised, and then he replied, "Oh," I said, what did I do? What did I do wrong that made you fire me?" He looked surprised and said, "Wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. We've simply hit a rough patch financially, and I had to do what I had to do, which was to cut staff. You were our most recent hire, so it was a simple case of seniority. I had to go with last in, first out. I'm really sorry it happened that way. You were really good, and we hated to lose you." Ah, so he did what served his agenda. I had nothing to do with it in the way I was imagining. So who created the rough patch for my boss's company? Did I create that, or did he create that? Or did his clients create that by not spending as much money with him? Who creates what? Or are we all creating everything together? This was an important awakening for me. I saw clearly that yes, we're creating the exterior events in our life collaboratively, each of us experiencing individually the collectively produced occurrence as the next step in our own evolutionary process. But thinking that I was doing this all to myself was neither accurate nor metaphysically beneficial. Coming to that kind of conclusion can have a real-time impact on one's life because the way we respond interiorly to any immediate exterior circumstance can often affect the way those exterior circumstances play out. My initial self-recrimination about my misuse of life's creative energy did not make it easier for me to feel positive about where to from here. It was finding out a few days later that I did not actually create losing my job through my negative thinking that helped me rearrange my internal energy around being out of work. And I actually found a new job within a week as I came to embrace that I was good at what I do. To summarize all of metaphysics in 11 words, the energy of life is affected by the energy of life. What is projected from us is injected by us into whatever is before us, whether it's in our mind or physically present in our exterior environment. If we project the energy of resistance into the energy of any unwelcome exterior event or circumstance, we give it strength by empowering its originating vibration. Does this mean that we should not seek to change something that arises in our exterior experience if we disagree with it? No, of course not. It actually means just the opposite. It means that we are invited to use a much more powerful tool of change, not resistance, but love. If we pour love into all that is arising, as described in chapter 11, we have suddenly and dramatically harnessed the most powerful energy in the universe. We then stand a far better chance of affecting that with which we disagree, and in a way that more closely matches that which we prefer and desire. And if two or more use life's most powerful energy in this way, miracles can occur. Remember this always. In the world of energetics, negativity only breeds negativity. As well, positivity breeds positivity. Much will depend on how many people are holding a particular kind of energy with regard to the exterior circumstances or events of life. If you live in an environment in which most people's first emotion is negative, most people's first experience will be negative. A more positive interior energetic response can also bring one to a place of true inner peace and genuine internal serenity, no matter how the exterior circumstance created by the multitude continues to present itself. And peace and calmness alone can often dramatically alter one's interior experience of any moment in life. End of chapter.
Thank you, Linda. Who would like to say something?
I would. That idea of co-create, that's something that I learned from my friend Vito Mucci, who I occasionally mention. And it just took so much pressure off of that feeling of like how I've ruined my life by the choices I've made and how I have not been good at the law of attraction, which is a true thing, but it's not the only true thing. I mean, you know, it's very good for going into that whole monologue, internal monologue about how, like, he's trying to figure out, did I create losing that job? You know, I got laid off from like 3 jobs in a row in the last 10 years. That can really do a number on your confidence, whether or not you believe you created that reality, you know? So that was the first thing I wanted to comment on. I thought it was so funny that he said jointly created, or he had a very cumbersome way of expressing the simple concept of we co-create our reality, you know. The other thing I wanted to say is this whole like attracts like thing, that just sitting there, I thought about this thing of like a magnet, and it's polarized, and like doesn't attract like physics wise, you know, the positive and the negative are attracted to each other and vice versa. So I just thought that that little explanation there sort of ignores that physical reality. And that's all. If anybody wants to address that at all, feel free. Otherwise, it's just a thought I had. That's all. Thank you. Over.
Good thoughts.
No, Mary, I agree with you. Sorry, go on, Joanna.
After you, Sarah.
I was just going to say, I kind of agree with you that I was really glad also that Neale said that about when you start thinking who created what, it gets really complicated. Because we had a meditation walk today that I was organising, and there were people kept saying, I'm coming, I'm not coming, I'm this, that and the other. And I caught myself thinking, who's sending energy to who to not want them there or to want them there? And I thought, this is too complicated. And then he sort of overrides it all and said, we just all put love into it. That's much more straightforward.
Yes, love is never wrong. Like love is, I wrote one time on something, love is the answer to every question. And I know it's kind of obvious, but like it came to me as an answer to whatever I was worried about that day, you know?
True. Shabana, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to tell you that just over an hour ago, the monthly e-treat with Neale ended, and he was talking about this particular job because he was trying to explain to someone who said to him, you know, how do you see the perfection in the worst thing that's ever happened to you? So he said that when I was fired from this job that he's talking about right here, right now, he said, I was in a state. I was so upset. And then I realized in retrospect that it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I hadn't been fired, I would have risen because I'm good at what I do. And then I never would have become homeless, and I never would have written the CWG. So I was giggling, and everyone else thought that was so funny, but it sure didn't look good at the time.
It's totally true. And as soon as you ask that question, how do you see the, whatever you said, perfection in this moment of the worst thing that ever happened? My answer was hindsight, because I've seen it in my life, how, oh, that thing that like I thought would be the death of me set me on this path that brought me amazing gifts. So yes.
Well, it's funny to just see him just over an hour ago explaining exactly that.
I think too, excuse me, from the time I was 8, when my biological dad died, I was constantly and consistently saying, why my dad? Why, as a little girl, why didn't God take some bum off the street or a murderer? I remember thinking these thoughts very clearly. And as I got older, my mom married my second dad, who turned out to be a wonderful second father, and they had 2 children. I would think, I miss the heck out of my biological dad, but I wouldn't have these 2 siblings that I love and adore if that incident hadn't occurred. Or, I wouldn't have the dad now that's teaching me different things in life if my first dad hadn't died. And I know that might be my brain talking to myself to make me make sense out of it, but that's the way it made sense to me. Over.
Yeah, because ultimately, because everything is divinity in form and function, there is a perfection in every moment, regardless of what the moment looks like, right? So I love this chapter because this is the worst teaching that people have ever received, that we create our reality, because it's incomplete. We create the reality within. That's where we're creating the reality, within us, in our response. That's the only place we have control. We have no control over anything else. The only control we have is over ourselves and how we choose in a moment to respond. And so I love this chapter, because it's like, yes, let's get this teaching out there. It's not how it works. It's not, I mean, it's just a piece of it. It's an element of it. It's not the whole picture.
Well, and the thing I think is interesting is that I've heard Neale say, I asked him one time, and I can't remember what had happened to me. but something had happened to me of pretty heavy nature. And I said to Neale, I said, you know, I mentioned to a friend of mine that blah, blah, blah happened. And she said, well, I wonder why you created that for yourself. And Neale actually looked ticked. And he said, that is a bunch of hogwash. And he goes, I call it the spiritual bypass. You know, it's like, oh, I'm just going to say this. And, you know, with no regard, at least in my perception, this person took no regard how that might hit me. And so ever since I heard the spiritual bypass, I have used that many a times over the years. Over.
Oh, I have to tell you about the spiritual bypass I just heard. A woman came on and she said that, she said to Neale that my daughter died 9 years ago, and I went to some counselor, I don't know if it was a spiritual counselor, who said to me, you're the one who created the death of your daughter. And this woman is really upset. So Neale said, okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the most dangerous thing that the New Age folks do. And this counselor who told you this needs to be fired, because now I'm going back to exactly what Linda said. She's spot on with what Neale said to her. He said, the reality could be anything, reality, you know, like in quotes, but your response, your response, not reaction, is what makes the difference. So she left the talk with Neale looking happy and accepting, because she said that through the years, her daughter has told her countless times that, look, Mom, I'm happy. It was my soul's agenda had been completed, which is why I left, and everything's good. But the woman said that because of the counselor's words, I doubted my heart knowledge. So it was quite powerfully moving, because he said that COVID or any other big event has nothing to do with anything except your heart's processing of this for itself. I was really touched and impressed.
The other day, when I was doing my Q&A, one of the people that was in attendance said that they were reading a book about abuse, and that the book actually suggested to her, or to the reader, that the person being abused in some way brought that on themselves. And I told her, I told her to burn that book. I mean, I couldn't think of any other words, because that's such a twisted thought, right? That because right, if you're going to apply it to, okay, I'm creating my reality, then that doesn't, at what age does that change? It doesn't, right? There's no discussion about age. And so that would mean that small children are bringing abuse upon themselves. No, that it's like, this is not how it's working. And so I really am so glad we're talking about it, because
and babies.
Oh, yeah.
Babies are inviting abuse. What the actual fuck? Burn that book, fire that counselor, and like that counselor should be disbarred,
Right.
whatever the equivalent is. It's like, yeah, the worst, most twisted teaching.
Right. Right. And
An
and
abomination.
they come about, well, they come about because that's that person's coping mechanism. That's how they've come to cope with the world. And so it works for them. And so it's a model that they're trying to, you know, put the rest of the world into. It's a broken model. And that's part of what's wrong on this planet is this notion that, well, you brought it on, you know. I've had in my business life in the last couple of months 2 very disturbing and traumatic experiences. And somebody suggested to me, oh, what did you do? And it was like, the thing is that the way I see it and the way I understand it is, as a population now on this planet, there is a shift happening. And I've been calling it the sheet shaking, right? Like Mother Nature shaking the sheet. And when that sheet settles on the bed, sometimes it doesn't quite settle right. And we got to shake it again to get it. And that's what we're in right now. We're all in this co-creation, right? When somebody quits and then asks for their job back and then, you know, doesn't do what I didn't create that. I created it by hiring them in the first place. But whatever's going on in their life that's making them crazy as an employee, I didn't create that. And it doesn't do me any good as an employer if I get all guilty about, ooh, how did I create this? No, you stay in your heart, you stay in the moment, and you respond to what's in front of you. That's how we get through this. That's how we move through these events.
I also want to just point out that when we say that we create our reality and everything in it, it's very handy for blaming the victim, not just in those kind of abuse situations, but you look at homeless people and you go, oh, they created that. So we as a society don't have to care about making sure that they have like the basics like housing and food. And, you know, also, you know, me, the financial stuff is always a rant very close to the surface, like the whole system that people who are in low wage jobs and can't afford to live. Well, they created that. So, you know, whatever.
Right.
They made their bed, let them lie in it. So I'm really glad we're shaking those sheets, Linda.
Well, and the key is that teaching ignores oneness. Right? It makes it like we're each individuals in charge of our own little sandbox, and we're not. Everything is made out of the same stuff. Everything is connected. So it is a co-creation. It's not any hand in it, but we don't have the only hand in it. Everybody's in it. Over.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful discussion. And I must say, if I should blame myself because my father died when I was 14, or if I should blame myself because my daughter died when she was 33, no. The only thing I can do is how I connect to myself when all these things are happening. I mean, I have been through a lot of things in my life, but it is how I connect to my inner, because that is the oneness. That's where I connect to the others, right. Whoever. And I used to say when I have had sessions and so on about when you have a quarrel with your man or something and say he's crazy and so on, look at him. If he would have been your son, how would you have felt? I mean, we can look at everyone, but of course, but the blame is something we project. But of course, I wouldn't say that, oh, it's a wonderful thing that this man raped this young woman. No, it's not that. But it is where I am connected in response. That is how I influence life. That's how I feel. That's the only way I can handle it. And I remember when my father died, how I just landed in I didn't know what meditation was because I was so young, but I came into some peaceful state of meditation. And it was love, because why should I cut off love because somebody dies? If I open my heart instead and stay in love, I stay in oneness. And I think that's the only way out. As you said, Linda, I think there is no other way, that I'm sure. So thank you for wonderful discussions and for the wonderful reading. I'm sorry I was late.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, Evelyn, in Estonia.
Yes.
Are you going to add something?
Maybe you told something about babies tell my sister is with Down syndrome. What does the, what about she tells tell to me exactly. Example. For example.
We understand what you're saying, Evelyn. We understand. And Linda's going to give the answer.
Okei. Nüüd siis nad saavad aru, et mida nagu Downi sündroom proovib õpetada meile.
What Down syndrome is trying to teach to us?
What does... ei saa oodata väga enam.
Miks?
Ja aeg on täis. What does Down syndrome is trying to tell, to teach us?
Are you saying Down syndrome?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so your sister has Down syndrome?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the way I look at life. I think of life as a big, like, chessboard. And each of us is one of those, you know, on the board. We're all on the board. But what moves, and there's an overarching purpose for us all to be here. And that purpose is to be love in form. And so for each of us to be here, that's what we came for, to learn how to be love in form. So in our lives, and it's really like we're living in a play. Everybody has a script that sort of outlines in the best way that we might be able to live a life to become that life, love in form. And so when we're born, there is sort of a plan, if you will. And each of us is gifted with certain qualities to help us in that plan. So in the case of your sister with Down syndrome, my guess is she agreed to come in to play that role of having that ailment so that the people around her would have the opportunity to find it in their heart, to find love, and to be able to be a good family with somebody with that kind of challenge. And so the gift is not to, the gift in it is how do you find love in you to interact in the face of that difficulty? And that's what your sister has brought to each of the people that she meets. It's a gift to everybody around her. Understanding what her gift is for herself, I don't know, because I'd have to talk to her. But there is something in her life. So just like Neale says, nobody ever dies at a time or place not of their choosing. Nobody ever comes into form in a shape and condition not of their choosing. So before she embodied into a physical form, it was her choice to come this way. And so the gift in this is for each of the people that meet her and interact with her to learn love. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have thought that, and of course I have read about this, but I have seen a lot of injured people with kuidas sa puuded? Injured or something, like Down syndrome or autism or something.
Right.
And I think that they life is so sad because some of them don't speak.
Right.
Don't speak.
Right.
And some can't walk or something.
Right. Right.
And some of them just is wasting
right.
Their life or something.
Right, right. It's very sad, right? It's very sad. And I think that these things happen so that we can grow to be better people. And it's a very sad thing. I mean, we can look all around the world and find all kinds of things that are just heartbreaking. And why would it be this way? And why would God create this? And so it's more helpful for me to give up the why and to just focus on the what. What does it mean to me? And what can I do to help? And so, because, for example, and this is very common now in today's world, we can see things that are happening all around the world because of the news and media. But I'm not sure that's intended, right? I'm not sure that's helpful. It's not really helpful for me to see or worry about children that are starving in South Africa or whatever, the people that are at war in other countries. The meaning for me is in here. What is my choice in response to those things, as opposed to judging the people that are in those places as not doing the right thing or not taking care of. It's a distraction, right? We get distracted by what's going on in the other world. I got a text the other day from somebody who was like, why don't we know about this thing happening in India? And it's like, well, because we're not in India and there's very little other than sending money that we could do, unless you're ready to like move and go be a volunteer, then it makes sense. But we can't take on everything, right? We can't take on all the things that are wrong in the world. And so it's best to find where your focus can be, and it's best to keep it local, because local is where you can have an impact. And realizing that, yes, at one level, when you look at it, there are all kinds of suffering and horrible things in the world. But it's all divinity in form. So there's something bigger happening, something much bigger happening. And when you understand the physics of it, the actual physics of it, there isn't anything out here. So it all has to come from the response within. And what you'll discover is when you can that and get a handle on that, and you're really in that place of I'm responding from my heart in a conscious, in the moment way, things will start to shift externally.
I'm going to butt in here because
I know, because we're over time. Sorry.
Right. But first of all, I want to thank you, Evelyn, for sharing.
Yes.
It really means a lot, especially when you're the newbie. And whenever we engage with the new person, I think it just makes our hearts, it thrills me that you're here. So I'm happy that you are with us. And Linda, you did a great job in your explanation as well. So
thank you.
You're welcome. And Shabana, do you want to do a quick meditation here?
It's a quick one. Thank you, God, for showing us the perfection in everything. All we need to do is listen to our own expanded heart to know what is ours to do, and then to do it with the purest love and the most sincere desire to help. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shabana. Thank you, everyone. And hi, Ann Derby.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Evelyn, for your question, and thank you, Linda, for your answer.
Yes, it was a very good day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good group.
Bye.